It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon in the suburbs, a family of 4 enjoying the comfort of their peaceful home, unaware that something, or someone, was watching. No one expected anything unusual. The parents were busy with work, the kids were glued to their devices, and Maria, the housekeeper, quietly went about her day, dusting shelves and folding laundry. She barely spoke unless spoken to, and even then, only with a polite nod or a soft smile. To the outside world, and even to the family she worked for, she was just the help, invisible, ordinary, unremarkable. But what they didn't know was that Maria was anything but ordinary. Strange things had been happening in the neighborhood. Packages missing, cars moving slowly down the street late at night, unfamiliar faces lingering too long near fences and driveways. The family had brushed it off. Maybe it was just coincidence, maybe teenagers pulling pranks, maybe nothing at all. But Maria noticed the patterns. She paid attention to the small details others overlooked. And that's when she realized something wasn't right. Still, she said nothing. Not yet. Because Maria had a past she had tried to leave behind. Years ago, before she became a housekeeper, Maria had a different life, one filled with secrets, danger, and training that most people couldn't even imagine. But she had buried that part of herself, choosing peace over conflict, silence over attention. Until now. On that afternoon, as the kids laughed in the living room and the parents chatted on a video call upstairs, Maria was in the kitchen when she heard a noise. It wasn't loud, but it was wrong. A soft click, the kind of sound you only notice when you've been trained to notice. She froze, her instincts kicking in like muscle memory. That's when she saw the shadow move past the window. Someone was outside. No, someone was already inside. Without saying a word, she moved quickly, silently. She scanned the room, her mind racing. Where were the kids? Were the doors locked? She reached for something, anything, to defend herself and the family. It was no longer about cleaning the house. It was about protecting it. And just as danger stepped across the threshold, Maria stepped into her old self, ready, alert, and fearless. What happened next would not only shock the family, but change everything they thought they knew about the woman they had overlooked for years. Do you want to continue with the next part of Maria's story? F. Explore how her mysterious past unfolds. F. Or find out what danger was really inside the house. F. Maria didn't hesitate. Her steps were soft but sure as she moved through the hallway, eyes scanning every corner. The living room was still filled with the sound of cartoons. The kids, Liam and Sophie, sat on the couch, unaware. She forced a calm smile and motioned for them to lower the volume. "Go upstairs and stay with your mom. Now," she said, her voice steady but firm. They blinked, confused, but obeyed, sensing something in her tone they hadn't heard before. She waited until their footsteps faded before turning her focus back to the house. That sound, it hadn't been a mistake. It was the same type of movement she used to train for years ago, when she was part of something much bigger, something she never thought she'd return to. Back then, her life was dangerous and secretive, working undercover in places where being alert could mean the difference between life and death. She had given all that up, or so she thought. When she came to this country, she promised herself to live quietly. Cleaning homes, doing laundry, it gave her peace. No one asked questions. And that was exactly how she liked it, until today. She stepped into the kitchen again, carefully checking the back door. It was locked, but something felt off. The curtains moved slightly, though there was no breeze. Then she noticed it, muddy, footprints on the floor, faint but fresh. Whoever it was, they were inside. Somewhere. She reached under the sink and pulled out a metal broom handle she had customized long ago. It looked ordinary, but it had weight and balance. It was all she needed for now. Upstairs, the parents were still on their call, unaware of the growing danger beneath them. The family had always treated Maria kindly, but with distance. She was there but never truly seen, never included in dinner conversations, never asked about her life. She preferred it that way. Being unnoticed made things easier, but now she'd have to show them a side of herself they'd never imagined. She moved toward the hallway, listening for another sound. There it was, a creak, faint, slow, like a foot pressing gently on an old floorboard. The basement door was open just a crack. It hadn't been earlier. Her heart pounded, not out of fear, but focus. She crept toward it, body low, grip firm, on the handle. Every step took her closer to the unknown, and just as she reached for the doorknob, a soft whisper echoed from the dark stairwell below. Something, or someone, was waiting. Want to find out who's hiding in the basement, F. What Maria is really trained for, FO. Or how the family will react when the truth is revealed, F. Maria stood frozen at the top of the basement stairs. The whisper had stopped, replaced by silence so thick it pressed against her ears. She held her breath and listened again, straining for any sound. Nothing. Her fingers tightened around the broom handle, its familiar weight grounding her. She slowly stepped down the first stair, careful not to let it creak. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness, shadows stretching across the narrow walls. Behind her, the quiet hum of life continued upstairs. The mother, Emily, was on a Zoom call about a real estate deal, unaware her home might be under threat. Her husband, James, was working on his laptop in the bedroom, wrapped up in client emails. Neither knew their children had been sent upstairs, by a woman they barely knew beyond the surface. Maria moved deeper into the basement, her senses sharp. A faint smell of damp concrete and dust hung in the air, but also something else, something out of place. Cigarette smoke, old, stale, but unmistakable. She hadn't seen anyone in this house smoke, not once in the 2 years she'd worked there. She reached the bottom step and stopped. The small storage room door was slightly ajar. Meanwhile, upstairs, Emily noticed something. Her daughter, Sophie, tugged at her arm and whispered, "Maria told us to come up here and stay with you." Emily frowned. That wasn't like Maria. She never interrupted, never gave orders. She excused herself from the call and tried to call out for her, but got no reply. Something didn't feel right. Back downstairs, Maria carefully pushed open the storage room door. Empty shelves, boxes, cleaning supplies, and a shattered window tucked behind an old curtain. Someone had broken in, and whoever it was, they hadn't left yet. She found a boot print near the wall, the dirt fresh. They were watching, waiting, and she still didn't know why. Was this a random break-in? Or something more targeted? Maria's instinct screamed that this wasn't by chance. The way the person had entered, the timing, it felt planned. Someone knew who she was. And they weren't here for the family. They were here for her. Want to see how Maria confronts the intruder, F. Discover what secret from her past is coming back, F. Or learn what the family begins to uncover about her, F. Maria took a slow step into the storage room, eyes darting from the broken window to the far corner. She could feel it. She wasn't alone. Her breathing stayed steady, but her pulse thudded in her ears. There was something just behind those boxes stacked near the old water heater. She crouched low, her broom handle raised, ready to strike. Then a slight rustle, like a boot shifting against the concrete floor. She crept forward, every step calculated. When she rounded the boxes, her body tensed, but the space was empty. No one. Just shadows and silence. Still, she didn't relax. Something about this felt wrong, staged even. She turned to scan the rest of the basement. Then she saw it. A small black device hidden under a shelf. a listening device. And just inches away, a tiny red light blinked. Recording. Upstairs, Emily paced the hallway, now genuinely worried. She checked the back door, locked. Then she noticed the security camera in the corner of the ceiling, the one the installer had told them never quite worked right. She tapped it on her phone app. Nothing, just static. She called out again for Maria. No answer. James finally stood up from his desk, sensing something wasn't right either. Liam and Sophie peeked from the top of the stairs. "Mom, I think someone's in the house," Liam whispered, wide-eyed. Emily pulled both kids back gently, her heart now racing. She dialed the police, but deep down, she had a feeling that by the time they arrived, whatever was happening would already be over. Back in the basement, Maria examined the device. It was military grade. She hadn't seen one in years, not since her work overseas. Whoever left it here wasn't just spying. They knew her history, her skills. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a message. She scanned the rest of the room, eyes landing on something new, a folded piece of paper tucked under the water tank. She unfolded it slowly. Inside were 2 words, written in block letters. "We remember." Her stomach sank. That name, the code they used to identify their targets. She wasn't just being watched, she was being hunted. And the family? They were just in the way. A sudden noise, wood creaking above her. Someone walking across the living room floor, and this time, it wasn't one of the kids. Want to follow what happens when Maria finally comes face to face with her pursuer? Explore what secret she's been hiding from the family all along. Or find out how close the danger really is now. Maria moved toward the stairs, clutching the folded note in one hand, her weapon in the other. The words, "We remember," played over and over in her mind. That phrase hadn't been used in over a decade, not since her last mission before she vanished from that world. It meant someone from the past, someone dangerous, was here, not just watching. Waiting. She reached the main floor and paused behind the kitchen wall, listening. The footsteps were slow but confident, echoing across the hardwood. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. That was the worst kind of intruder, the kind that knew they were in control. Maria peered around the corner and caught a glimpse. A tall man, dressed in black, his face obscured by a cap. He was walking through the house like he knew it. Like he'd been here before. She took one step forward, ready to act, and then froze. The man turned slightly, revealing a mark on his neck. A scar. One she remembered clearly. She had given it to him. His name was Victor. Back then, he was part of her old unit, until he betrayed them. Left several of her teammates dead and disappeared. She had always believed he was gone for good. Now here he was, inside the home of the only people who had ever trusted her since she walked away from that life. Maria stepped back, heart pounding. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Victor didn't come to find her. He came with a plan. Upstairs, Emily gathered the kids in the bedroom, locking the door. James, phone in hand, was checking every camera feed. Suddenly, one of them flickered to life, the front porch view. Another figure appeared. A woman this time. Blonde, sharp eyes, and holding a small device. She looked directly into the lens, before the feed cut out again. They weren't alone, 2 intruders, coordinated. Maria realized this was bigger than she feared. They weren't here for a quick hit or a robbery. This was a takedown. And somehow, the family was part of it now. Then came the second twist. As Maria turned to reposition herself, her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from an unknown number. She opened it. A picture. Of her, with the kids, taken that same afternoon. A message followed. "Leave now, or they disappear." Her stomach turned cold. This wasn't just about her past catching up. It was personal. They had been watching all along, inside and out. And the real question now wasn't just how to stop them, it was how much they already knew. Want to dive into Maria's connection to Victor's betrayal, I. Find out how deep the surveillance really goes, I. Or uncover what secrets the family unknowingly holds, I. Maria didn't have time to think, only to act. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and moved quickly, silently, through the hallway. Victor was now in the dining room, inspecting family photos on the wall, his gloved hands brushing over frames. He wasn't hiding. He wanted her to find him. She gripped the broom handle tighter, but her mind stayed focused. A direct fight would risk the kids. She needed to outsmart him. She grabbed a small mirror from the entry table and used it to check, around corners. The second figure, the woman, was at the back door, disabling the alarm system manually. They were clearly professionals, coordinated, trained, just like Maria used to be. She made her move. A flash of motion through the hallway, and suddenly the lights cut out, plunging the entire house into darkness. Maria had flipped the breaker from a small side panel. She knew the layout better than anyone. In the confusion, she slipped behind Victor and struck him clean across the back of the knees. He dropped hard with a grunt. She pressed the broom handle to his throat before he could shout. "Why here?" she hissed. "Why now?" He coughed and smirked. "You still don't know, do you?" Before she could react, a loud bang echoed from the back of the house. The woman had broken in. Maria sprinted toward the sound as James swung open the bedroom door upstairs, yelling for the kids to stay put. The family chaos gave Maria only seconds to work. She tackled the intruder just as she reached the staircase, both of them crashing into the wall. The woman fought hard, fast, but Maria was faster. She knocked the device from her hand and pinned her to the ground. Sirens wailed in the distance. Emily's call had gone through. Backup was coming. Then came the twist. As Maria turned to check, on Victor he was gone, but not alone. A voice rang out from upstairs. "Where's Sophie?" Maria's blood went cold. In the commotion, Victor had escaped, with the youngest child. She sprinted up the stairs, heart in her throat. But just as she reached the top, the front door slammed open. 2 officers entered, weapons drawn, and behind them, Sophie, unharmed, held safely in the arms of a stranger, a man in a suit, badge flashing. "I'm Agent Cole," he said, nodding to Maria. "We've been watching this group for months. You just flushed them out." Maria blinked, stunned. She looked down at the note still clutched in her hand. But one question still lingered. If Agent Cole had Sophie, then who did Victor leave with? Want to explore who the real target was all. Uncover why Victor really came back after all these years, or learn what secret Maria has yet to reveal, Maria stood frozen, eyes locked on Agent Cole as Sophie ran back to her mother, unharmed. Relief washed over the family in a wave of tears, hugs, and disbelief. Emily held her daughter close, James shielding them both as the officers secured the house. The threat had passed, or so it seemed. But Maria couldn't relax just yet. Something still didn't add up. She walked out to the front steps, taking deep breaths to calm the adrenaline rushing through her. Agent Cole followed her, his expression calm but serious. "You did well," he said quietly. "We'd been tracking Victor's team for months, but we didn't know they'd make a move on you directly." Maria turned to face him. "Then who did he leave with?" Cole looked down, almost hesitant. "There was someone watching from the neighboring property. We believe it was his backup. They left just before we arrived." Maria nodded, already expecting that answer. She had known Victor wouldn't come alone. This wasn't just about revenge, it was unfinished business. Years ago, when her unit went dark, Victor had sold intelligence that cost lives. Now he was rebuilding his network, and she had just made herself his biggest problem. The police cleared the house and the surveillance devices were collected. Emily and James tried to process everything: how their quiet housekeeper had turned out to be a trained operative, how danger had been sitting right outside their door, unnoticed. That night, after the house calmed down, Emily walked into the kitchen where Maria sat alone, staring at the folded note. "You saved us," Emily said softly. Maria looked up, the hard edge in her eyes softened. "I just did what I had to." "No," Emily said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did what no one else could." The family never saw Maria the same way again. She wasn't just the quiet woman folding their clothes and cleaning their dishes. She was someone who carried secrets, someone who had risked her life to protect them without hesitation. And though they had questions, they respected her silence. A few days later, Maria packed her things. Not because she was running, but because she knew her presence put them at risk. Before leaving, she slipped a letter into Sophie's backpack, a simple note that read, "Be brave, always." As Maria walked down the driveway one last time, she didn't look back. Somewhere out there, Victor was still watching. Still planning, but now he knew she was watching too. Want more stories about hidden heroes living among us, F? Or curious how ordinary people hide extraordinary pasts, F? Or what happens when secrets come to light at the worst moment, F?